chop them down, and then butterfly them open. And what you had on the inside were these inner fillets of the sugarcane plant. Those inner fillets were saturated with pure sugarcane juice, and that's what they were looking to harvest from these sugarcane plants. So they would take all these inner fillets once they harvested a bunch of them, put it on a grinding stone that was powered by a windmill back then, and that grinding stone would roll over those inner fillets and press all that cane juice out. They'd harvest all that cane juice into clay pots about waist high. And after about 2 weeks, they'd set it off to the side. And after about 2 weeks, due to the warm Caribbean air, it would basically dehydrate that cane juice, all the moisture out of it, and what you were left with was pure panela sugar. Panela sugar is basically unprocessed, unrefined, dehydrated cane juice. And that panela sugar is still around today. We actually just launched our first panela rum, which we'll go into a little bit later. But panela sugar was very prevalent in Asia, South America, Central America, not so prevalent in the continental U.S. We have our bleached out white granulated sugar that you buy off the shelf. Down in those areas of the world, panela sugar is a lot more prevalent because they don't have white granulated sugar. So panela sugar is the sugar that they use there. So, but once they harvested all this panela sugar out of these clay pots, they found this brown sticky substance kind of stuck to the bottom of the clay pot. They started scratching their head thinking, well, what the heck is this? What do we do with it? It's considered a useless byproduct at this time. And they scraped it off the bottom of these clay pots. They put it in a barrel and just set it off to the side to rot. They tried to use it for fertilizer and a couple other things, but nothing took. So they either scraped it off the bottom of these barrels, bottom of the clay pot, put it in the barrel, just set it off to the side, or they just flush it down the creeks and rivers into the ocean. Until one day, a gentleman was on the island of Barbados. It was actually documented. A gentleman was walking by one of these barrels of brown sticky substance. He stopped and studied for a second. He looked at it, he kind of scratched his head and said, so it's kind of bubbling and churning. And he thought to himself, well, if it's bubbling and churning, then there's fermentation happening. If there's fermentation happening, we can make alcohol from it. So the rest is history. That happy accident, that's how rum all started. And that brown sticky substance that was stuck to the bottom of those clay pots was blackstrap molasses. And what they discovered later on is blackstrap molasses was a natural occurring byproduct of dehydrated cane juice. For every 2 pounds of panela sugar that you harvested out of those clay pots, you had 1 pound of blackstrap molasses. And what they discovered was going on in that barrel was Mother Nature at its best. It was a barrel full of blackstrap molasses, kind of just rotting away, and got exposed to some yeast and bacteria, wild yeast and bacteria in the air, got into the barrel, and all it took was a little bit of rainwater to fall and activate that yeast. And fermentation began, and they discovered that they could make alcohol from blackstrap molasses, water, and yeast. And they did. Shortly after that, the first rum distillery was born, and that was Mount Gay Distillery on the island of Barbados. Still there today, it's still in operation, and are the longest operating rum distillery in the world. We were the first. And there's not a bar you can probably go into that doesn't have at least 1 bottle of Mount Gay rum in it. And if you're ever in Barbados, make sure you stop by and see the distillery. So we have them to thank for this today. So, yeah, the rest is history. And then after the first rum distillery popped up, and more started. And from there it just exploded. You got rum distilleries all over the continental U.S. Believe it or not, sugarcane is now back to, kind of went full circle. Sugarcane is now back to being considered a rare commodity. There's not many plantations left. 2 of the major plantations are on the island of Maui and Hawaii. And believe it or not, the 3rd largest sugarcane plantation is right down in Georgia. Richland, Georgia, to be exact. And Richland Rum Distillery owns that 350 acres of sugarcane, and they produce some very fine rums from that sugarcane that they harvest there. So,
I have a question.
yes, sir.
Is there like an intermediate product before you distill it into rum that some type of, not mead or wine or whatever, but is that not really?
Those are no intermediate product. It goes right from blackstrap molasses and water as your mash or your wash.
Yeah.
That takes about 3 to 5 hours to break up that blackstrap molasses in the water and basically become one solution as your wash or your mash. And then after that, they go into the fermentation tanks. That's where yeast is introduced.
Yeah.
And fermentation is the longest part of the distillation process. So it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 days for those yeast to do their job. First they reproduce and multiply at a rapid pace, and after they're done doing that, then they consume all that blackstrap molasses that we give them. Yeast love sugar and are happy to do it, happy to consume that blackstrap molasses. So, but what you have left after the consumption of the blackstrap molasses, yeast consumes the blackstrap molasses, you have 2 byproducts. You have CO2 or carbon dioxide, and you have, most importantly, alcohol. for the first time, so to the tune of about 8 to 10%. And so the idea is to take that 8 to 10% alcohol, go and strip it out of our batch, and then increase it exponentially all the way up to 75%. The whole process, rum distillation, takes about 7 to 10 days per single batch of rum. And basically you just strip that alcohol out. Once you strip that alcohol out, you're actually increasing it all the way up to 35 to 40%.
Beer,
What
wine,
do they,
or like mead.
Are you using oak barrels, metal, what do they use in
mineral
the
extraction.
process of this distillation?
Stainless steel and copper. Yes, ma'am. Yep. No oak barrels. The only oak barrels we use for rum is our aged rum. It's our Solera rum that we aged for 4 years in a port sherry wine cask. And then our bourbon as well. Obviously, bourbon has to be aged a minimum of 2 years. But when you're making all our flavored rums, they start off as our platinum white rum. And from there, based on what our production schedule is on any given week, we just flavor them with real whole ingredients. Just like our spice rum, I got a jar of our spices here just to show you the spices that go into it. And basically, we just run that white rum through those spices or whole ingredients for about 6 hours, picking up all those nice flavors. And yeah, no aging involved. Right as soon as we get the right flavor and aroma profile we want, then it goes right to the bottling line and right into the bottle. Very little waste as well. So once you get to the end of the distillation process, you're going to have your heads, your hearts, and your tails. It's basically separated out into 3 parts. And your heads and your tails, you basically take those and set them aside. And those become what we call rum feints, F-E-I-N-T-S. And those rum feints are, think of it as a sourdough bread starter or a yogurt starter for your next batch of rum when you're ready. So,
Like sour mash, right?
what's that?
Sour mash if you're making like
No,
fish
things are
sour.
just basically, so once you distill rum, basically you have a lot of other alcohols that occur in the process. And those other alcohols actually and ketones remain present in the final product of your batch of rum. But that's the difference between rum and other spirit production is that these other alcohols and ketones remain present in very small, lower safer quantities because they are harsh to begin with. The final product will have that in it. And those become what we call rum esters. And those rum esters are what give rum its very distinct flavor and what separates rums from other spirits. Any other questions?
What distinguishes one company's rum from another then if the process is the same? You know, like I know with wine, it's how long you leave it in the barrel, when you harvest your grapes.
Sure.
So what's the difference between different rums? What makes yours unique?
Yeah, I would say, ours are unique in that we, like I said, the difference between us being a micro distillery and national brands out there, national or bigger, larger distilleries are that we use whole ingredients to flavor our rums. A lot of national brands don't have that luxury because they have to pump out at such mass quantity. So they'll kind of cut some corners, use some extracts and flavorings to do that, to flavor their rums. But I would say the difference between our rum distillery and other distilleries too is every rum distillery is different based on what your starting ingredients are. So we use blackstrap molasses, but Richland Rum Distillery kind of skips the blackstrap molasses because it would actually be more time consuming for them because they actually have to dehydrate the cane juice that they harvest right from their cane and then go through the entire dehydration process just to harvest that blackstrap molasses. So they said, well, what's the point of that? We'll just use pure cane juice that they harvest out of the cane sugar. So their rum's going to have much different flavor profile based on what you're using as your starting point. So whether it be blackstrap molasses or sugarcane juice. Sugarcane juice takes on a much cleaner kind of almost a brown sugar kind of flavor to it, and then the molasses has a deeper, more complex flavor profile because of the fermentation that happened. So yeah, everyone's a little bit different, but I guess it's all based on what your palate prefers, and that's why we came up with so many different flavored rums as well. We have about nine different flavored rums that we do right now.
Do you all experiment much as far as try new things, whatever?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Our master distiller Whitney, he's been with us for about 1.5 years now. Loves experimentation, and that's actually why we ended up bringing him to Hilton Distillery. So about 1.5 years ago, there was an article written about. He was actually on the West Coast over in Seattle, and he was working at one of the distilleries in Seattle, Washington, and acting as an advisor to a couple other ones at the same time. And one of the distillation magazines actually ended up writing an article about his creativity and what he's bringing to the rum distillation and what he's doing that other rum distilleries aren't. And really going out, pushing it to the edge and experimenting with different flavors. And our founder, Joe, happened to catch that article. He keeps up to date on all that. And caught that article. And after he read the article, he said, when you get on a plane, I'm flying out to Seattle to go get that guy. So he flew out to Seattle and spent about a week to 10 days with Whitney and his wife, and just getting to know him and seeing if they jive and if it was going to work. And eventually, at the end of the week, he convinced Whitney and his wife and their dog Ruby to pack up everything they own and move down to South Carolina from Seattle, Washington. So,
Is
I
there
don't know if it was that hard to sell.
is there much like with vodka? You'll run through charcoal filters or whatever as far as removing some of the impurities. With rum, not so much, or
because you want to leave those other some of those impurities are actually
Right.
what become, like I said, those rum esters or rum faints, and they remain present in the final product. But yes, if we do produce our own vodka. It's our Airmore vodka.
okay, from sugarcane or
It's actually made from blackstrap molasses, water, and yeast.
Okay.
Just like our rum, so there's really no difference.
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
rules as far as what you can start your vodka with. You can use anything basically. It's not like with bourbon you have to have a minimum of 51% corn in your mash and so on and so forth. But yeah, our vodka starts the same way. The only difference is our production facility has the capacity of producing other spirits other than rum. So we have three they're called column stills.
Yeah.
And as you're running your spirit through those column stills, if you choose to, if we're making a batch of rum, we run it through a single column. So those rum esters or rum faints remain present. And if we're making vodka, then we actually just run it through all three. And by running it through all three column stills, you're stripping out those rum esters. Because you don't want rum esters in your vodka. Vodka is pure ethanol alcohol. And the final product is about 96.5% pure ethanol alcohol. So,
have they tried any other different type of sugars to like maple or agave like tequila, whatever?
Yeah, we've actually experimented
There's
with both.
yeah.
We've
Really?
started messing around with agave. We did an initial batch.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't work out. It was our first time fermenting agave, and someone went wrong in the fermentation process. We had to scrap it and start over.
I think there is a commercial product that is like a hybrid of rum and tequila, or it's interesting, right?
Yeah. And then about a month ago we just released. We swapped out our blackstrap molasses for vanilla sugar, which I just talked to you about, the vanilla sugar from dehydrated cane juice. And that vanilla sugar acted as our starting point. And we did the first run on Bertha, believe it or not, about 7 months ago. And Bertha sprung a leak during it, unfortunately, so she went into semi-retirement after that for about 6 months. We had to get it repaired, but the first batch of vanilla rum was run on her. And Whitney messed around with the recipe and eventually perfected it, and we just released that vanilla rum about a month ago. So it is Navy strength. It's 114 proof. So yeah, really hot, but absolutely delicious. It takes on a completely different flavor profile with the vanilla sugar as opposed to the blackstrap molasses.
So the initial fermentation is 8 to 10%.
Yes, sir.
Have you all thought of as far as trying to produce some type of beer or whatever from that, just experimentation wise?
No, because that distiller's beer, the 8% is
There's an interesting, I think it's McKeeson, which is a Caribbean. I forget if it's Trinidad or where, but it's actually made from milk, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, there's endless possibilities. Actually.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the advanced class. You're gonna take the
Well, yeah.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, it's rum is made differently too. To go back to your initial
Right.
question, man, it's made differently all throughout the world. Jamaica, they in order to enhance that fermentation process, they'll take rotten meat, believe it or not. Goat heads and rotten meat fermented. And none of that meat or bacteria or anything wrong, obviously. They're cooking at such a high temperature, it kills off all the bacteria. And
Does Appleton do that, or?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But so that's a little bit about rum and our distillery. We do have 50 people here, so I'm going to have everybody start do the tasting. If you guys want to start off, we'll just come up. I'm going to divide you